Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, boy. Hopefully you hear me loud and clear today. I'm putting my glasses on because it's way too bright in this room. What's going on? I have some extra special coverage for you here today, folks. This is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun episode, and I'm hopeful that my alternate hardware makes YouTube happy. It probably won't, but hopefully that it will. It's not permanent, but I'm testing. Now, I spoiled this on Twitter that I was going to cover a different type of scam that I don't think anybody's talking about, but it came to me when I saw what was happening with Strange Inu, with Suzuki. I would argue even to some degree, Phantom Project maybe, UST to some slight degree, especially now, Luna to some slight degree now, Squid Game. The list goes on and on of projects that seem to fit in this category I refer to affectionately as the Pied Piper scam. The Pied Piper scam, I don't know that anybody's really, in fact, I'm sure nobody's talking about why this is a scam and why it's a thing and what this means. The Pied Piper scam, to me, basically means, in summary, we've got this process we want somebody to follow along with, invest in, deal with, do something with. There's something that we want people to do. When I say we, could be the token developers, could be shillers, could be marketing firms, could be advertising firms, could be some owner of a company. We want somebody to do something. And as a result, we have a self-imposed obligation to lead people down a path towards an objective. The reason I refer to it as a Pied Piper scam, and I'm assuming everybody knows the story of the Pied Piper. Of course, it originated in Hamlin, I believe. The idea was that there was a rat infestation. This person swore that he could get rid of the rats and that he had this ability to charm these rats to leave this building. There was a falling out between the Pied Piper and the townsfolk, and as a result, he basically charmed the children to follow him out. Now, this story has been passed down and changed and edited, but the concept is the same, that being that somebody with some kind of charm of some degree was able to convince a bunch of people to follow them into something or towards something or away from something, in most cases away from safety and away from being secure and away from their family and away from whatever. As I look at the current state of cryptocurrency, I realize that with Strange Inu in particular, Strange Inu had two layers of this. You had presumably, I wasn't there, but presumably a dev, where the dev, it seemed like the dev was giving bad information to somebody or was somehow able to charm somebody else into believing something to be true. And as a result, these people follow this person along blindly. They don't question it, presumably. Again, I was not there. But they blindly follow this person or these people along all the way to their detriment, because then those people who have followers ultimately talk about this project and it results in the followers following their person towards this Strange Inu, which then, of course, rug pulls. Now, as I'm thinking about all the different projects that are out there, there are certainly projects that you can make a case have some sort of an appeal to them. It's like there's something here. But then there's projects where there doesn't appear to be anything fundamental about it that is worth somebody's time, at least as far as you can tell, and everything that you look at, it doesn't feel like it's worth anybody's time. It feels like it's a waste of time, and you're just stuck trying to understand what really is going on with this thing, and why should anybody pay attention to it, and why is it allowed to continue? So it got me thinking, is it not true that this kind of concept is in of itself a scam? Because whether it is known, whether it's aware, whether it's obvious, whether it's whatever, I don't think any of that matters. At the end of the day, you are giving the impression that something is legitimate, whether by action or inaction, and you are leading people to an outcome, whether legitimate or not. And by doing so, you are causing people to be harmed, whether it's financial or otherwise. So this whole situation with UST and Luna, and people are wondering, why would you include them? Here's the truth. With UST and Luna, we now have two sides of the aisle. We've got this side that says we should just burn supply and let the thing rebuild and get back healthy state. We've got this other side that says the burn's not going to work and we need to fork it off. And on both sides of the aisle, you have influential people who are pitching for their case. Most of the people who want to do the fork are the validators, who are the people who make the whole thing work. And in talking with one of them, it's clear that some of this is profit motivated. They feel like we're going to lose money if we don't do it this way. We're going to lose money. I'm not going to do it for free. Whether he's good, bad, right, or wrong, indifferent, I don't care. It makes me wonder, though, if his intentions are truly legitimate and if he's really thinking about the best interests of the majority as opposed to his own pocket. On the other side of the aisle, the burn side, these are people largely, I would argue, largely ones that bought off the dip, who, whether they have the best of intentions or not, are trying to save the project. They're trying to salvage what's there. And there's a theory that, yes, we can help the project and we don't need to do a fork and we don't need to damage things. However, you have to question, is this motivated by good faith or profit? Because remember, anybody who bought it off the dip instantly becomes a millionaire if there happens to be a strong burn position placed. They instantly become a millionaire. Anybody who is still left holding, unless it's able to get at least back to all-time high, might be operating at a loss. I'm not advocating one side or the other. What I am saying is, in some way, this UST, Theyre, Luna, Anchor, all of this, Mirror, I think I heard, all of which disappoint me for a different reason, but all of this, these are all forms of a Pied Piper scam, if you think about it, because we're basically having people be led by certain other people who want us to go a certain direction, irrespective of whether it's in that person's best interest or not, or the people following's best interest or not. It's just, this is the way we should go. And everybody else is expected to follow along, possibly to their detriment, possibly to their harm. And this is where I get concerned, because I don't think anybody's talking about this tendency to just lead. I saw there was an article. Apparently there was some crypto billionaire who qualified as the bona fide definition of a shill on this Luna business, Novogratz, I think it said. And apparently he's gone silent. He's not said a word since the whole thing happened. Okay, well, where was all your heart and fire when they need you, which is they need the community needs you to step up and say, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through it. We need to create a plan and calm down, move forward. You're all bells and whistles when the thing is up, when your bag is up. But when things are down and they really need you, you're nowhere to be seen. The core definition of a shill, because as I said, a shill doesn't care about you, doesn't care about the project, they care about themselves. So this Novogratz, for whatever reason, is considered important enough to have news articles posted about this dude. And the fact that he's gone silent since this situation, he qualifies in this, quote, Pied Piper scam that I've defined, because he has led people into this project. If he, by way of his influence, there's that word again, has led people to buy into this project, has led people to buy into UST, has led people to buy into Luna prior to this crash, you can argue he's just as culpable for what happened to those people. And if you think about it, if he's truly a crypto, quote, billionaire, that means he could, if he really cared about the investors, do some things to try to help the project out. Like, think about this. And this is a good point. These that I'm referring to, these so-called Pied Pipers, strong, highly influential people who lead people into a path of failure, many of these people already have billions of dollars. If you said that, let's throw out numbers. Let's assume that there's 500 billionaires in Luna, because you have to think BlackRock's involved, Citadel's involved, this Novogratz is involved. KSI had millions in the thing, so he's a low bit player in the money aspect. It's like, who's above him? And then apparently there were people at the highest levels of Coinbase that were in it, CZ Binance was in it. So you're at some level, we have to agree there's got to be a lot of money of just people in this project. And if you, let's say there's 500 billionaires, are we seriously saying that these billionaires can't come together and come of their own pocket to help save the project, which actually helps themselves? I'm not suggesting they give away all their money. I'm not suggesting you turn into a charity. I'm saying, are we honestly saying that they cannot give anything at all to try to help the project, which simply just solidifies why I say these people don't care about you and they don't care about the project. They care about themselves. So now we get into this discussion of all these different projects, right, where people are getting enriched, and the ones who are the most wealthy lead other people into the project under the auspice that they're also going to get wealthy themselves. And the truth is they get harmed because many of the regular investors are not guided as to how to properly invest to keep their bags safe, nor should they be. We're not financial advisors. We can't ethically tell you what to do. There's an assumption, though, of culpability if we steer you towards a project, which is why I try my hardest to always give you pros and cons, because I don't want you to feel influenced to make a decision based on what I say. I want you to see it on both sides, and I want you to make your own decision, and I want to empower you and educate you as to the things I look for so that you can build your own strategy for what you look for to avoid these various scams. At the end of the day, it's going to be on you and what makes sense for you and your portfolio. And I feel, in my opinion, that many of the so-called influencers don't do enough of a good job in vetting the project before we even talk about it for somebody else. Now, you've noticed I've talked about projects that are even crap, right? The reason I do this is so that we can talk about why they're crap. It's part of the learning. And I'll even tell you, in my opinion, I wouldn't invest in this, but it's good that you're aware of the reason I would not invest in it and what I see is wrong with the project, which could be as simple as there's a problem with the website, the white paper's garbage, they don't have any leadership shown, the liquidity is in a bad state. These are basic fundamental things that I use these bad projects in order to help educate that this is what ideally you would look for to make sure that you're staying safe when you're evaluating projects. Other influencers may not necessarily give the negative of what's going on. When you don't give the negative, it's a form of misrepresentation, aka the Pied Piper syndrome, because again, you're leading somebody towards an outcome. You're leading somebody to believe a thing. If you as an influencer believe in your heart of hearts that something is legit and strong and up on the level, what I would expect as an investor now, putting my investor hat on, is to hear you call them out straight up on the air. Everybody that's listened to my show for any period of time has heard me call out every single project that I've seen has issues, even the ones that don't have major issues, call them out to fix some of these things that I'm seeing because I want the project to succeed. I want it to last. I want it to be a good investment. I don't want to see people get wrecked because of things that are preventable, things that we could avoid, things where we can make it a solid crypto environment for everybody. I never want to see people get completely destroyed because of things that I offered or I talked about or I mentioned or any of that kind of stuff. To me, I like to see that they're strong projects and that they're going to be here in the long term. And I don't want to steer anyone to a project. I want to give the pros and the cons. And if my con tells you that it's not worth your time, I want you to walk away from it. I don't want you to invest in it if it's garbage. And if it's not garbage, but you just simply don't agree with it for your strategy, I want you to walk away from it. Same thing. It all ties together. So for me, my summary on this whole Pied Piper situation, I believe it's a problem. And I don't think, the honeypots, we're seeing less honeypots. We are seeing rug pulls. They happen all the time. But I believe those are symptoms of the Pied Piper situation. I believe when you have Pied Pipers out there who lead people to a thing, I believe it gives the scammers ammunition to do what they do, meaning they'll build a project in a way that is like a trap. If you know the idea of the ant traps that are just liquid inside of a tube and then the ant can't get out because the liquid is designed to basically slowly kill them as they consume it, or the concept of the fruit fly trap where you put a funnel over a jar, put fruit in the bottom and the fly can't get out. That's what we're dealing with crypto now. It's less about, you randomly stumbling across a project and you buy in and then they rip you off. It's more someone somewhere steered you towards a project, and then you looked at it and you didn't hear anything negative, so you decided to buy in good faith, and then you get wrecked. Now, if you followed the best practice of not YOLOing in and only investing what you can afford to lose, and you've kind of reconciled that you're going to lose money at points, it's probably not that bad of an impact. We never want to see you lose any money at all, but the reality is everybody's going to lose something. It cannot be avoided. Everybody's going to lose something. When we accept that everybody's going to lose something, now what we have to do is figure out what we do about that, which is just simply manage your portfolio, stay safe, don't allow anything or anybody to influence you into that direction. Make sure it's by your decision that you buy into a project and not because of somebody telling you to do it. You can look at it and say, okay, this person said it's cool. I'm going to go ahead and look at it a little bit deeper. And if you see things that are concerning to you, then make sure that you're not just buying in simply because that other person said it's good, whether that's me or anybody else. I could look at a project and think I just did French Connection Finance. I love their website. I love their flow. I love their process. I haven't bought in yet. And you're like, well, why not? If it does everything, simply because right now wasn't the right time. There are other projects that have my priority. I stacked up MAG on 2 other projects because they're launching on an exchange. And I expect that especially with one of them, because it has a good burn, I expect there's going to be some strong price movement. Now, I also recognize that we are in somewhat of a bear season still, especially with what happened with Luna and Theyre and UST. And so I don't throw money around just because I like the project. I keep it in mind. There's a lot of projects I've kept in mind, have not actively tossed more money into. No shit, that's one. Market Move, I haven't tossed more money into it. I haven't even tossed more money into Everrise. I love these projects, but right now wasn't the right time to invest more in them. And as I talk about them, I can even see things that are challenging with them. One project that I'm going to be covering, and I might even talk about it. I don't know if I'll talk about it here or I'll talk about it in a different session, but another project I have to revisit is Luffy, formerly known as Luffy Emu, because I covered Luffy way back on the podcast. So this would not have gone on. I'm pretty sure it did not go on YouTube. And, at the time I felt like, okay, this is going to hold you back. How you built this. You've got too much of this anime stuff going on the site. And I think you need to make it a little bit more serious for serious investors. Well, they've done a revisit and they've completely renovated the site. They completely renovated the token, the icon. It's a V2 launch. They've started over from scratch and they've rebuilt from the ground up and built a brand new thing. So now I have to look at it again and see what I think. And then I have to give you my thoughts on the new version of it and where it's going, because I can supplement with what my concerns were before. But I can then cover it now under this new lens, but now it may change my investment strategy. Ultimately, then I'm giving you still the pros and cons of what I see, because there's always going to be cons in every project. Every project's going to have something that's an opportunity to improve. If they didn't, you would never be in a good spot. I can tell you just in a surface look, Luffy is 10 times better than what it was before. 10 times easily better than what it was before. And it looks like they fixed pretty much every issue I had before with them, except one. And maybe that one's not a big deal, but they fixed almost every single thing, that I ever had a concern about. And so then when I revisit it later, I can say, you know what? These guys are serious and they're worth the time and the attention that I gave them time before. I took like 30 minutes to talk about it. But I walked away with so many concerns that it wasn't, if I were talking to you guys on YouTube, I would have said, nope, I am not going to recommend this guy because of this, that, and the other thing. Well, now that I look at it again, I can revisit that thought and say, you know what? Now there's something here. We also are accountable to do that. As I believe influencers, we have to revisit when we have a certain thought, whether that's positive or negative, and we have to be brave enough to say, okay, if it was positive before and now it's crap, we have to be available to say that. You know what? Right now it's crap. Before it was good. Right now it's crap. If you heard me, I said with Libero as a great example, I could not help them. It's not that I think the project's bad. They're making some mistakes, but I still think it's a decent project. I think they're just too arrogant. Whereas Saitama, I think it's a lost cause until you get rid of the people. Right. And this was a project that I was heavily invested in, and I never advertised heavily. I never promoted heavily. I never talked about to a significant degree, except for the times leading up to the failed Vegas event. So I never considered myself in this position of steering people towards an outcome. It felt like I wanted to make sure if I'm doing a coverage, it is as a blase ex parte. That's all it is. You're hearing somebody talk about it from their eyes, and then you make a decision that makes sense for you. And I'm not influencing you in a direction or not. So, with that, I hope that's clear. In what I see is starting to get worse before it gets better. It's the Pied Piper deal. And again, it's not, I would even argue that it's not the influencer's direct fault. The influencer may be having an impact. I would argue it's not their direct fault. What I'm saying when I say the Pied Piper scam, the token devs are counting on the greed of the influencers so that they can set the trap. So it's kind of like a honeypot in a way, or the fly trap, ant trap, but they need somebody to draw people to them. So they're very brilliant about whether they pay somebody to do something or they word of mouth, like Theyre rugpull, whatever they're doing to convince these Pied Pipers to steer people that way. If it was a straight up scummy project, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But a lot of these, like Strange Emu had a really good white paper, but it didn't matter because everything else was garbage. So I'm just saying, I believe that there's kind of a fundamental expectation that we take the time to really look at the project, really analyze it, make sure that we're not just recommending something simply because it looks good, but we're recommending things that actually are going to benefit those that listen to us. If not, it's no different than a Pied Piper. With that said, I think I am going to go ahead and cover Luffy now because it's a good example of what I'm talking about in coverage and how coverage works. Now that I'm aware of all the changes that they've been doing since the last time I covered them. See, when I covered this guy way back yonder, I had a real big problem with the fact that they had just nothing but anime garbage all over the site, and I was not pleased at all the imagery and all the whatevers. I wasn't pleased, and so I skipped it. So for me, I'm like, okay, this doesn't work for me. Let me switch this out here. All right, Luffy, right? So when I covered this on the podcast, I won't say I trashed them, but I did kind of hammer them because what you had was the One Piece, I think it's One Piece pirate or whatever, this dude, and all that was the art all over the site. There was no professionalism, there was no seriousness, and it was an emu token, so that really hurt them. And I wasn't harsh, but I really took them to task in what I felt was, it's like I can't give credibility to your project the way it's built. Fast forward, now the logo's changed, the imagery's changed. The site, luffytoken.com, has completely been renovated. It actually looks more serious. They went to multiple networks and then built the bridge, and then they were targeting the blockchain and everything else. They still kept the anime, but they deprioritized it, which was one of my feedback points. I never said get rid of NFTs or anime or any of that. I said deprioritize this stuff. It looks like they did exactly what I said. So whether they listened to me and just didn't give me my credit, or they just knew that what I was saying is the truth, regardless, I like to see that these things have changed. They registered an LLC. They locked up the liquidity. They opened up on their team. That was another thing, that we didn't know who people were. They went on a bunch of exchanges. They built games. They did all this stuff, and they kept the rewards. So when they did the V2, which was very recently, they kept the rewards. They kept the reflections. Unlike Kiba, unlike Paratoken, where they dropped the rewards just on exchanges, this is proof positive of a token where it's been able to keep the reflections in place, but still get on the exchanges. It's on more exchanges than I'm pretty sure it's on more than Kiba, and it's damn sure more than Paratoken. Yet they managed to keep the reflections, which tells you these other token projects were doing it wrong, and I could have helped them if they weren't so arrogant. But then I saw that on their site, the Luffy now, on their site, they opened up who they are. Like, they straight up gave names. They gave pictures in the vast majority of cases, and they have LinkedIn sites. None of this was there before. So they're taking this seriously. They're absolutely serious and wanting to get in the game. I don't know how the Luffy name is going to work for them long term, but it's their project. They can do what they're going to do. I'm simply saying that I'm proud of where they've come compared to where they were. And then the version of the white paper that's out there now, which is the V2 white paper that was just released last month, I won't say it's the best, but it's up there as one of the top white papers because it goes into my rubric. It tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the team, about the process, the project, what they're doing, why they're doing it, the phases, the tokenomics. It's up there in one of the best white papers in the business is this white paper. If I had a complaint, it would be that there's a little bit more focus on anime than I like, but I understand why because there's NFTs and games which use that stuff. My concern though would be if they're not doing licensing agreements with the One Piece, whoever makes the One Piece anime, they're going to run into some problems, some licensing issues down the road. And then they have, different art that might contradict somebody else's rights. So, but that's be the only complaint. Everything else is amazing in the way that they built this, which is telling me, okay, these guys are now serious. But if you listen to my whole coverage I just did, while I'm impressed with everything that they've done, while I'm impressed with the way that they've approached this, while I'm impressed with the way that they're building out and it's turning into a serious business and the LLC and everything else, you've heard me intersperse things that I don't like because I want you to be aware. These are things I don't like, and here's why. The vast majority of the stuff I see, I like to see. I think that they're stuff that should have been there from day one, frankly, but it tells me that they're maturing and they're trying to act like a business, which is critical. It's vital to see projects that do this. And being on multiple networks gets away from the risk that there's going to be any sort of a problem, like with this business, with the Binance scams. You can now choose to do a different network, and we don't have to worry about the exchange. So if you don't want, let's say you don't want to pay the gas on Uniswap, you can go to Binance and get it and then bridge it over. They're also supporting EverSwap. And if you've heard me on Everrise, I'm a big fan of the Everrise ecosystem. I love everything about it. Yet again, though, I had some negatives on it, nothing major, but I did have some negatives on the Everrise ecosystem that I'd like to see fixed. But generally speaking, I love what they're doing. I love everything about Everrise's ecosystem, just like I love the current version of Luffy. So my point in covering Luffy now was to give an example of the kind of coverage that I like to see and I like to do. I like to hear as an investor, but I also like to provide, which is I'm telling you what I like to see, but I'm also telling you what I don't like to see. I like to give you both sides of the equation because I don't want you to feel like I'm pushing you towards a project. In all points, when I give you the address, in this case, LuffyToken.com, I'm expecting you will go to their site, you will look at it and see if it makes sense for you. And if you have questions about it, that you can come and you can ask me. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, especially because some of this is very complex. There's a lot of detailed things that you have to keep in mind. And I don't want you to be confused necessarily because it can be confusing. This one's not so much, but I know there are projects out there that tend to be unreasonably confusing. And so if, ask, that's what it's here for, either at cryptotalkradio.net or the comments on one of our videos. We try our best to answer questions as long as you ask the question respectfully. We're happy to get you an answer on those because our whole purpose of being online is to try to help people, period, point blank. There's no other reason that we have for being online other than to help people. Now, since I mentioned complexity, I'm actually going to cover one other project. I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to do it on a different upload here shortly. I'm going to go get some water, and then I'm going to do this one. This one was requested actually by a listener. I shouldn't say requested because they didn't request it. They just gave a smarmy remark about it, and that's fine. I'll reply to a smarmy remark about it. I took a look at it, and I'm going to cover this one. If you have tokens where you're curious about it, we're happy to provide at least the swag, if nothing else, about the tokens that you find interesting. Understanding our goal is not to steer you to any project. Our goal is not to convince you to buy or not to buy. Our goal is to give you what we see. You got to make your own decision. And chances are, this is important, make sure you're not coming at us already having decided and you're looking for somebody to either agree with you, which is groupthink, or disagree with you. You need to come in with an open mind. If there's a project you want us to cover, we're happy to do it. Leave it in the comments or cryptotalkradio.net. What's the project and why are we covering it? We're happy to do a swag. You need to keep an open mind. We're doing it because we're providing our thoughts as an investor from one investor to another, and then we sprinkle in a little bit of our technical knowledge and business knowledge, financial knowledge, service knowledge, development, and everything else to try to round out what we think. It's ultimately up to you whether you go forward. I will tell you this, though. Of the projects where we said, I don't see there's anything here, each and every one of them is crapped. Just calling it what it is. That's not bragging. I'm calling it what it is. Every project that I've said, I don't see much here, is gone in the crapper. Seifu, crapped. Now, part of it's not that project's fault. It's part of it's the bigger picture of, Libra's release and the Luna. I believe the Luna UST had a part to play, and, all these other things. The point is it crapped. As I said, it would likely do. Everything I said on that one came true in terms of its price movement. Theyre, the cucaracha, crapped. Phantom Project, crapped. Certain fundamentals, they cannot fail you. They cannot fail you. And so when I see it, I'm going to call it out. Certain ones look like they might be stable and they might last, but something could happen to them that may not be its fault, like elephant money, which crapped, and it's not recovered yet. I see commitments that it's going to recover, but it hasn't recovered yet. I don't see anything fundamentally wrong with the code. Doesn't mean necessarily that the dev is competent. And what I'm hearing after the fact is he may not be. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the project. It may still recover, but it may just take it longer because they didn't realize how bad the project was. But I'm talking about the projects I said that look like they're crap. Every last one, pretty much I'm like Floyd Mayweather, undefeated in finding the ones that look like crap, and then eventually they go to crap. Does not mean they won't eventually recover. I simply say I think it's going to crap, and whether it recovers or not, it's all up to it. So when I cover this next project, it may be one that you're interested in, and I encourage you to join me over there if you're live and hear that coverage. That one's going to take a bit because even if it's a swag, there's a lot to it, and I want to dumb down what it looks like they're trying to do because I want to be fair to them. And if they're listening, I want the smoke. Now, with the way their project's built, I doubt that they will talk to me. That's okay. I want to still do the coverage anyway, and then we'll see where we go with it. Ultimately, though, I think you got the point with the difference in approach of somebody who provides coverage of a thing, gives you the information, pros and cons, ups and downs, the fundamentals, the basics as we see it from an investor view, challenging you to make your own decision about it, as opposed to, as I said, kind of a Pied Piper concept, where the Pied Piper, it appears like that person is trying to lead you into a financial disaster, even if they don't know it, even if they're not aware that that's what's happening. Sometimes this token dev was either charming enough, brilliant enough, or convincing enough to convince the Pied Piper to lead you into that, which is why it's vital that you think with your own mind and don't allow anybody or anything to make the decision for you. Do it because it's what you think makes sense and have your own criteria for evaluating a project that works for you. And take the time to classify yourself into one of the categories of investor. And I'll repeat it again because we have new people. I find 3 categories of crypto investors, but investors regardless. There's the FOMO crowd. The FOMO crowd will react, frankly, backwards to that graph. When it's green, they buy. When it's red, they sell. As backwards as that is, that's what the FOMO crowd does. There's the gambler. The gambler doesn't care about the fundamentals of the project. They see that it's got a chance to go 5x or 10x, and they're going to do everything they can to make as much money as they can and get the hell out. Then there's the traditional investor. They're the ones that are looking for more stronger things, like the Everrises of the world that have venture capital backing it, that have stability. And they're classifying their cryptocurrencies in different levels, and they're building diverse portfolios. They're the traditional ones. They're not gambling on projects hardly at all. They might go after long plays or short plays, intermingle, but they're not actively just going after the pump and dumps either. So pick which one you are. And chances are you're one of them. And if you're new, you're probably in the FOMO crowd and haven't built to the point of being a gambler yet and not experienced enough to be a traditionalist. The point is, you should stop and think, which one are you? Are you the FOMO? Are you the gambler? Are you the traditionalist? If you are the FOMO, you are susceptible to this business of the Pied Piper. scam. As long as you recognize that, that's fine. Just make sure you recognize that's what it is. I would argue if you're willing to allow yourself to be subjected that way, you're really in the gambler crowd at that point, because every single one of those projects will then be a gamble. They might work out and they might make you rich. So it's a gamble because you can't know. You can't know with something like a strange emu, except if you looked at the fundamentals. And if you didn't want to look at the fundamentals because you were assured by somebody else and you took their word for it, you're gambling. You're gambling on their good faith. You're gambling on their due diligence. You're gambling on their reputation. And that's okay. As long as you admit yourself, I am a gambler, I'm just going to gamble money. Then that's what you are. If you're a traditionalist or you want to be the traditionalist, the kinds of things I'm looking at are the kinds of things you're going to want to build your own set of criteria. And you need to hold to it and not get tempted by the Kindle. That's all I got for my Pied Piper of Crypto episode, featuring my overview swag, quick swag of Luffy token, no longer emu. I hope that was helpful and beneficial. I'm now going to do a coverage on a token again that was requested by a listener. I have to find the listener's name, so I want to credit him on the air, smarmy though he was, before I cover the crypto. And then this one is a bit unique. So if you're interested in it by name, I encourage you to join me over there. It's not a bad project, but I don't think people are going to like what I have to say about it. Not because it's doing anything wrong, but I think it's trying to solve the wrong problem. So, thank you.